After finally finishing my first full-length game in MV, I wanted to take a bit to talk about what it's like using RPG Maker for game design, how the program performed for me, and whether or not it's worth using. I've made several games on RPG Maker XP before, as well as dabbled around with RM 2000, 2003, and VX Ace for a time, so I'm pretty familiar with the series of engines. I will say that if you're just getting into the game-making stuffs for the first time, I'd still recommend starting with RM XP. It's got a lot less going on for beginners, and if you like it, you'll feel more comfortable forking out the big bucks for good ol' MV here. A quick note before I begin. I'll be basing this review on the most recent version I've used, MV Editor version 1.5, because let's just say if I was using the original release build, this would be a significantly less enticing review. MV follows the other RMs, in which it's incredibly easy to pick up, but it also comes with enough flexibility to be used in pretty much any way you see fit. As far as the interface goes, it's more or less a refined version of the previous RMs, and works in basically the same way, at least as far as the user side of things go. Event commands take the place of writing code, and you merely need to click the desired commands to enter it, and then play it out in-game. And let me tell you, it's got a lot of stuff you can mess with, and that's even before you have any idea what you're actually doing. It naturally comes with a database, which stores all of the internal game data, so characters, skills, and that kind of thing. All in all, if you've ever picked up an RPG Maker before, you shouldn't have any problems navigating this one. It's comfortable, intuitive, and the main learning curve for users is more game logic and learning where to actually find what you're trying to do. Side view actors in battle is also back, finally making a return since RPG Maker 2003. Now, there's also tile-based mapping and plugins, but I'll go more depthy on those later. One MV-specific feature is having it usable on other platforms besides just Windows. This is nice. Or, I mean, it could have been. By doing this, it seems like they sacrificed a lot of usability, especially by trying to push mobile games. You can use MV to make mobile games, but it took quite a few updates to really make it usable, and to my knowledge, you're still quite limited. A lot of common plugins for it aren't usable, and a lot of a game's performance will rely heavily on the phone itself, which is a big, scary black box if you're trying to do anything more than the basics. By setting MV up this way, it required using JavaScript and essentially have all games run in a browser. Now, this has some interesting consequences, but as long as you're not trying to make a super extreme, crazy heavy phone game, it's not a huge downfall. I think it's actually a really creative way to do it. But I myself will never venture into phone game realm. I have too much of a thing going on with obscenely large games with tons and tons of graphics, so that's all I've got to say about that. Quick note, MV does not like integrated graphics cards, so laptop users, I wish you the best of luck. MV actually seems to perform very oddly with some graphics cards, like causing Yawnfly's Victory Screen's experience bars to hang, or causing errors that only show up on older cards. Though I've only tested this on version 1.3.1, and I can't personally replicate any of these problems. I've also had this weird experience of running my super massive graphically intensive game on my main PC and having crazy frame drops, while in these same areas on my very old and outdated server computer with an older version of the same kind of graphics card and significantly lower specs, they run at full frames? Heck, the entire game ran better on it. I've got no explanation for this. I will say, provided you have at least a decent computer, MV and its games can run darn near flawlessly now. I've mentioned already that MV's been out for a while and, as such, has had a few updates. The editor updates were great! Love the dark theme! So happy they added encryption even if it's weak sauce. Love the mouse scroll map zooming. Love the character generator. Kinda hate what they did with the kids tab. Love, 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 love that I have a search feature now! Seriously, best addition ever! I cannot stress how convenient this is! Especially if you name your NPCs with Z's as indicators, and you have a player character who also has a Z name that accidentally ends up at the bottom of the list. Oops. The one thing I would have added is an actual search results page for the plugin list. When you've got a couple hundred plugins, it'd be super helpful to be able to search the creator name, since most of the plugin creators prefix the plugin name with them, and have it list out all of them. But, that is fine. They blessed me with a find button, and I am most certainly happy with that. On plugins, I feel like RPG Maker's usability with scripts and plugins is what makes RM good to use. RM's got a dedicated community, figuratively throwing massive hordes of amazing plugins and features at you. Even for someone with absolutely no programming knowledge, MV makes these so easy to use. They've set it up to use parameters, so you can simply type in the spot it tells you to do the thing. And with the 1.5 updates, they made it even more easy by letting the scripter specify more about the parameters for ease of access of the user. Yes! The updates to the editor are great, but a huge pain in the butt for updating existing games' core scripts when Pixie gets updated. Updating can cause certain plugins to freak out, preventing you from updating, despite these updates generally containing a lot of performance-enhancing code. Now, it's all fine if the plugins get updated, but some just don't, and that's fine. I mean, in most cases, you're using scripts that someone took time out of their day to make because they themselves wanted to, that you're using for free, and I mean, who would want to rewrite their plugin every time there's a bloody update that breaks the universe? But then, you also have the problem of not always easily knowing what version of MV your plugin's for. So then it's a whole lot of fun trying to figure out if it's incompatible with something else you're using, the plugin, or if there's just an error in the plugin itself. Fun times. But I digress. This is only really an issue if you, like me, work on lengthy projects that can take multiple years to make, especially when starting a project only a few months after the program's release. I imagine the updates will dwindle, and starting a long-running project now won't be nearly an issue. I do still get very, very infrequent random crashing, and this weird bug where my preview music mutes itself and then stops letting me preview music until I restart the program? Getting back to features, MV added back in event search. I kind of wish they did a little more with it. Now given I have used it, it does work great, and I really appreciate being able to search variables and switches, even if it kind of glitches out on me sometimes. I'd like it to be able to search more data, like searching item locations or specific event commands, and have it execute more intuitively, like being able to actually click on the data it gives you and have it either take you there or bring up the event. I feel, though, that this is a bit unrealistic on my part. So with that in mind, I'm very, very happy they brought it back even this much. At the very least, as a result of using JavaScript and designing the engine the way they did, you can actually go into all the data files and manually find, search, and edit things. Just be careful and make backups, okay? And new point, just don't edit these while running the game. It'll get ate. True story. I'm also super happy about the Quick Event Creations tab being brought over from VX. If you're trying to make your game stand out, I wouldn't recommend using these for everything all the time in every game, but they're incredibly helpful for people trying to learn how to do things. Trust me, if I had this back then, my treasure boxes in my first game would have actually treasure boxed. Speaking of features from VX, tile sets. Okay, so my game uses parallaxing. That is, single obnoxiously large images instead of using tiles. Now let me state, for the record, using tile sets is convenient, it's easy, and saves a heck of a lot of load time. I am not a fan of how MV handles tile sets. I find it too limiting for the kinds of things I want to do. I'm not a fan of the approach they used as far as mapping goes. You paint over the previous tiles with new tiles, meaning if you screw up later, you have to redo everything. I do, however, like it better than VX's system, and it as a standalone concept is not entirely terrible. I'm sure there are people who do like it, and I'm sure they'll give you 100 reasons why it's the best system they could have used down in the comments. It's just not for me, personally. But it's not bad, not the worst, and totally 100% usable. I do actually find mapping in MV fun. It's almost kind of zen. If they would have included an actual layered toggler, it would have been golden. There are actually a few things I've missed from older RMs, like screen transitions and fogs, actually having the menu fade in, and for whatever reason not being able to force animations on the players in battle, despite this being the first RM in a while, to actually use side view battlers. I can't complain too much here though, as almost all of the old features exist in some way or another as plugins that you can find online for free. And I think that's kind of what they were going for here. I kind of feel like I've ragged on MV a lot here, but if I'd have said I had a great time using it and everything was peachy, it would have been a significantly shorter video, and probably boring. I don't think I could go back to using XP anymore. What I appreciate most about MV is its sheer convenience in what it does. I feel like a lot of features they've added in since the release have been so great for user convenience. And I can't tell you how amazing it feels to use a program that's as comfortable as MV is. MV does exactly what its tagline represents. It's easy enough a 10-year-old can make something up, maybe not something good, but it'll get them thinking in game logic. Similarly, if you have all the answers and totally know everything and exactly what you're doing, it gives you a base to use, so you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel, and the convenience to use and expand on what it offers. That's why I love MV, and that is why I give MV, the program it was, is, and can become, a recommendation to buy it if you're at all interested in getting into game making. It is certainly not the most advanced system, nor the most technical, but that is exactly what makes it great. Not everyone can be a graphics artist, not everyone can be a music composer, and not everyone can be a programmer. The RPG Maker series offers you something to overcome those kinds of shortcomings and make something yours. Make something you want to make, and teach you how to practice those skills. Maybe you'll move on to a different game making program. I've certainly tried a good many others, but I always come back to these ones. Why? So I can push my game making skills without being limited by my own limitations. If you want to see the kind of games I make, and a bit of MV's potential, you can check them out at echoedgames.com/game-projects. Or pick up my most recent MV game over on Steam. RPG Maker is a tool, and the tool is only as good as the person using it. Now good luck everyone, and I'll see you later, gamers!